Have you ever wondered how those people that fly on private jets actually manage to get their logistics handled? I know a lot of people that wonder how basically these guys get to book private jets. And typically, there's two ways of doing so. There is the method of going directly with the operator or owning the jet yourself. Or there's the other way, which is by going through a person that is called a private jet broker. Now, we are going to be focusing more on the broker side of things today, as that is also what my company does. So we will be talking about the aspects of what does a private jet broker do on a daily basis and how do they handle the requests that come through. So, let me give you a brief introduction. So, as you all know, my background is within business aviation, which means that at this moment in time, I am quite versed in this industry because now I'm entering almost my ninth year in the aviation industry. So, also the fact that I have that type of knowledge, I could basically proceed with opening my own business. So, and basically that is what Pick a Jet does. So my private jet brokerage, Pick a Jet, typically handles flights, yachts, helicopters, ground transportation, and that is mainly what we do. I'm not saying that that is only what we do, but that is the main activity, the business activity. And a private jet broker typically is there to aid a client that is looking for a particular flight. And typically, I mean, the flights can range from last minute to a few months in advance. And obviously, depending on whichever of those categories it falls under, it is handled differently. So, for example, a last minute flight is typically handled with a matter of urgency because typically the client just wants to get out of that place or they want to hit up the skies immediately, which is a flight that we typically call a go now flight. Or maybe it's a flight for the upcoming summer, which is an upcoming leisure trip that they are planning with their family. So obviously, a flight that is a few months away is not handled the same way that a go now flight is. A go now flight typically needs immediate action, it needs immediate contact with the operators, it needs everything needs to be expedited. So that is obviously the difference between the two. Now, let's say the client comes to us, Pick a Jet, and they say, I want to fly from XYZ and I want to go on this aircraft and I will basically not want to spend more than an X amount. Our job as a private jet broker is to handle and provide options. So it is to organize the logistical part, but also given that we give the personal touch to the client. So once we receive the request, we typically get in touch with the client and understand what the requirements are. And if there is any type of information that is missing on the request, we typically ask the client for this. And the more information that we have, the more information that we can provide to the operator, the more information that we can filter down the request and provide more accurate options for the client. So once we receive the request and we filter out the requirements for this particular flight, what we typically do is tap into our vast network of operators and find the operators that match the flight that the client is looking for. So, for example, if my client is looking for a transatlantic flight, there's no point in going to a European operator that has a light jet fleet. So, typically, this is what we do. So, we filter down the operators that might be a potential match and we reach out to them. And we can do this through a marketplace, or we can do this directly through the contacts that we've built throughout the months that we worked in this industry. Once we collect a few options and we basically understand which one could potentially be the best match for the client, we then filter them down typically to 3 to 5 options. And then we obviously send this information to the client so that they can take a decision based on what they're looking for. Now, let's say the client finds an option that they like. They come back to us, say, I want to proceed with this option. If the case that it's a very last minute flight and we really need to proceed basically with the payment and the contract, so as to expedite the process. Whether if it's a flight a few months down the road, there is typically more time to take it easy to organize the rest of the stuff. And that is exactly by identifying obviously also the best options and the best operators for the client, typically is what consume the most time consuming part of the job. And that is why it's also like important to have industry knowledge about this stuff, because if you go and look for the operators yourself, one, you will waste a lot of time, and two, you might be overwhelmed with the amount of options that there are. And part of our job is filtering down the operators that are certified, trustworthy, that are basically reliable, and ones that typically tend to cause the least amount of problems for us. And because the last thing that you want is an aircraft that goes AOG due to the poor maintenance that the operator has. So this is what we do, and this is why by going through a private jet broker, you get the best of the best. And this is one of the main reasons why executives or people come to a private jet broker, as they carry the expertise. We know the operators that we should avoid. We know the operators that we typically could go our preferred operators. And with this information, obviously, we can take a better decision for the client, and we can also recommend operators or an option more than the other. So this is why people come to people like me. If you had to put aside the flight, we also tend to sometimes organize ground transportation for the client. Sometimes they want a helicopter, we're available. And sometimes they might even ask us to book the hotel, or maybe, for example, a super yacht for them. So it can range. And that's why I told you guys that we don't just do this, but our main activities are a private jet brokerage and like ground transportation, helicopters, yachts, and hotels. Typically, that is what we mainly organize for the client. And the difference between by going independent and also going like through a broker is, apart from the fact that you are going through a verified source and someone that has the knowledge to cater for the request, typically also we tend to provide the service with a personal touch. And our main clients are the ones that we regularly work with, because these clients, we get to know them on a more personal level, so we can customize the service on an even better way for them. So the more a client flies with us, the better we get to know the client and what they prefer. And for example, if we have a very frequent client that always likes a certain type of jet and they're always flying the same routes, we can basically work with that information without asking him all the time for this, what type of aircraft do they prefer. And that is why a private jet broker is helpful. And we also tend to carry the knowledge on the requirements, the regulations that come into place. For example, if I have a client asking me that they would like to land in Germany at 3 a.m. during the night, I know that 99.9% of the airports are closed in Germany due to the night restriction. So given the fact that I have the operational knowledge, I can go directly to the client and explain to them the situation. And sometimes the best way to basically explain a negative answer is by explaining, because the more you educate the client, the more they're able to basically understand what is going on. Because if you tell the client like, no, you cannot land in Germany, you have to either land in the morning or choose another country, they're typically going to be like quite pissed off, because they expect, by paying that amount of money, they expect that the airport even opens up for them if it has to. Whether if you go to the client and explain and educate the client why they cannot land in the night, and basically suggest an alternative, maybe by delaying the flight by 3 hours, you get to land in Germany at 6 a.m., and that means that the airport has just opened up. So typically, what I found out from my personal experiences, the more you educate the client, the better the service gets, and the more typically that they understand the problem. Basically, that is the main reason why we do what we do. It's to offer a customizable solution to someone that requires assistance with regards to their traveling needs. And if you had to go independently, like looking for your own operators, it's also very time consuming. I mean, if you get to think about it, we spend sometimes almost up to 2 hours looking for options. And if the flight is a more complicated flight, typically it will require more in-depth work to find the right operator for the trip. So imagine by someone just Googling like private jet operators, how tricky that can be. And basically, that is what a private jet broker does. I mean, if you actually had to summarize it, it's pretty much like travel concierge for the ultra high net worth individuals, because that's exactly what it typically, basically, that's exactly what it is, you know? So, last minute flight, business trip, leisure activities, we can do it all. Small jets, medium jets, large jets, we can do it all. So, as a private jet broker, we tend to offer options. We tend to give you the best value for your money, because we can also negotiate the pricing in a better way than you if you had to go directly to the operator. So that is our leading edge, and we have like trusted partners in this industry, so we get to work with some pretty cool operators. If you had to think about it, in my opinion, it's one of the most secure ways of booking a private jet. And as private jet brokers, we obviously take our work very seriously. We work with safe operators. We basically have a secure way of transferring the payments and working with the financial side of things. So we take pride into what we do, and we do it basically with passion and love, because we do love our work. So if you guys have any requests, if you guys would like to understand more or would like to look into an option of booking a flight with us, I will leave a link down in the comments. And I hope to see you guys in the next video or in the quote page for of PickJet. So thank you guys for watching. I hope this video served as an educational video, and I hope you got some value from it.